How you doing, folks? Yours truly, Randy Rain here for another edition of today's talk. Today we spoke with Deborah L Mills, and she's the author of the article "How You're Cursing Your Child: The Truth Behind Generational Blessings." Deborah has also worked with Black and Married with Kids, also with Ebony Magazine, the Griot, as well as the National Association of Professional Women. And we talked about the article that she wrote, the "How You're Cursing Your Child: The Truth Behind Generational Blessings," and she went into depth about what she meant about what a generational blessing is, speaking good and positive things into your child and into your child's future, and how you pass things down to your children, whether it's traits of yours, good traits, and we also discussed how you can also pass down negative traits to your children. And it's a great interview. It's a great interview. I would strongly suggest that you listen to it, as she's very well versed and very very good with regards to relationships and issues that affect families and children. And it's a great interview. I hope you enjoy the interview, and thanks for the time. And we're back. Yours truly, Randy Rand, here for today's talk. Today we are talking with Deborah L. Mills, and she's the author of the article "How You're Cursing Your Child: The Truth About Generational Blessings." She's also a speaker, as well as I mentioned, an author and transitional life strategist. And she's mentored with organizations like Crowley Cares, RARE, that's RARE, which is serving middle school students, and Community Parent Engagement programs. And she was also the keynote speaker with the National Association for Professional Women and Mocha Moms. Hello, Deborah, and welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you today?
Um,
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for giving us some of your very valuable time, and welcome to today's talk. Could you please introduce yourself to Westchester and Rockland counties?
Yes, Westchester and Rockland counties. As you heard, I am Deborah Mills. I am in the Northern Virginia area, about 15 minutes outside of D.C. here. I'm a mom of three adult children and grandma to one.
Could you please define what a generational blessing is?
Yes, a generational blessing is a blessing that you pass on from generation to generation, from family lineage to, from one year to the next. From 2016, I'm going to pass on things to my children that they're going to take with them in 2017, 18, 19, 20, and that they'll pass on to their children. So it's something that we instill in our kids that's going to continue for generation and year and year and year to come.
As I mentioned, we're discussing the article that you wrote, uh, entitled "How You're Cursing Your Child: The Truth About Generational Blessings." And it's a very profound article. I would certainly recommend to anyone to to read it, because it's very profound in what you had to say in it. What made you decide to write this article?
I write for Black and Married with Kids. I write for them once a week. And as I was writing this article on this particular week, I was just thinking about how this is not something that's discussed a lot. We sometimes as parents, we just do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
But do we purposely sit down and think about what we're instilling in our kids? Are we thinking about, I know when I had my kids years ago, I wasn't thinking about being a grandmother.
Okay.
But
Okay.
really, what I was instilling in my kids when they were 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, now for my son, those things are now showing up in his daughter, the next generation.
Yes.
So the thought is to just stop and think, what are the qualities, what are the things that I want to pass along? So in writing this article, that was my point and hope, that we would start a conversation about what do we want our kids to know? What do we want them to pass along when we're not here anymore?
I think that's very, again, to use the word profound, and you mentioning that and asking the question, what do we want our children to learn? What do we want our children to know? Certainly. I think that, and I hate to keep harping on the word profound, but it is because it shows just, what you were saying. It shows just how much we need to be thinking down the line. In other words, generationally, you know, and what our children are learning and therefore what they are going to be repeating as far as,
Right.
our behaviors, what we've taught them, so forth and so on. I think that's incredibly important. Now, you mentioned in the article that a generational blessing is released into the family lineage from generation to generation. Would you say
Yes.
this? Would you say the same is true for negative traits like illegitimacy, illiteracy, and others?
I do think so, actually. I really do. But here's the thing with that is we're saying that something is passed along. That child has opportunity to accept or reject what's being passed along.
Yes.
So
Oh,
there can be generations of illegitimacy or illiteracy, but somewhere that generation one begins where they say, okay, I'm not accepting that. You're trying to pass it, but I don't think I want to take that ball and run with it.
I see a lot of that happening with racism that's happening. To be quite frank, along as well as like say with white people, uh, I see a lot of kids, the millennials, that are refusing their I don't want to say history, but for lack of a better term, they're refusing their history of practicing racism by accepting black people and any other people for that matter for what they are. They don't really care about the racist tendencies and so forth and so
Hmm.
on. And I see that happening. As you mentioned, they're not accepting it.
It honestly goes both ways
Yes.
because, the generation that I grew up in, my mother is from West Virginia. And going to West Virginia every summer was much different than being here in Northern Virginia. When we
Yes.
went to West Virginia, it was a different place.
Yes.
Blacks and whites did not commune together the way they did here in Northern Virginia.
Hmm.
And there's also been a change in, the black culture because in those days in West Virginia, neither race was accepting of the other.
Yes.
And when I go there now, I see a difference that there is a more accepting of each other, blacks for whites and whites for blacks.
Yes, indeed it is. It's happening, I think, in all races, where, say, the generation before these millennials may have practiced racism or may have experienced racism. Well, these millennials are coming along, and along with what you were saying, they're not accepting the way that the older generations were thinking, which is a good deal, I think, quite frankly. That's one thing of the generational traits that's not being handed down, and I'm very uh, grateful for that. To tell you the truth,
Yes.
I think it's a good way moving forward. You mentioned in the article things we can pass along as a generational blessing, such as a humble spirit, a heart of humanity, a fondness for a specific profession, etc. In in your opinion, is it true that the more quality and instructional time we spend with our children, the better the better the chances of them to achieve these lofty goals?
It is actually not my opinion. That is not my thought process.
Hmm.
Um, for quality time and instructional time, I think the basic thing is to spend time with your children.
Okay.
And that time, you're going to pass along the person that you are to your kids. So whether it's instructional time, whether it's something that we deemed as quality time, it's all time.
Hmm.
But you can only pass along the person that you are. As parents, as we get ourselves together, it doesn't matter what kind of time you call it. We're passing along who we are.
We are speaking to Deborah L. Mills. She's the author of the article which we're discussing here today, How You're Cursing Your Child, The Truth About Generational Blessings. She's a speaker, author, and transitional life strategist. She's mentored with organizations like Crowley Cares, RARE, RARE, which serves the middle school students, as well as the Community Parent Engagement Program. She was also the keynote speaker with the National Association for Professional Women and Mocha Moms, and she's so very kind to give us some of her very valuable time today. Deborah, with regards to our children learning their purpose in life, what steps would you recommend parents take in ensuring this takes place in their homes?
I think the first thing is that if you are a Christian family, if you're in a house that believes in God in any sense, you need to start talking to Him.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that because God is the creator. And there's no better place to find out the purpose of a thing than to go to the creator. So that would be number one. And then I would say allowing your children to explore without criticizing what we don't understand. If I can, I'll give you an example of that. Is I have one child. I mean, she's an adult woman at this point, but when she was a little girl, she would play with the lint out of the dryer.
Okay.
She
Wow.
would make rugs. She would make anything using the lint from the dryer.
Wow. Okay.
Now, first thought is, girl, put that stuff away. That's dirty.
Mm-hmm.
That's not clean. Well,
Sure.
actually, it is clean because it went through the washer and the dryer, right?
Uh-huh. That's right. That's
but
right.
your first thought is, that's garbage. Throw that in the trash. Now, we didn't do that. We let her play with it. What is it going to hurt? We didn't understand it, but we didn't stop it. And this is my child who grew up to major. She got her undergrad degree in interior design and her master's in sustainable design, which is an architecture degree, how to,
Oh.
make the world more green.
Okay.
I mean, back in that day, the word green didn't even exist. Not at all. And here she gets her master's in sustainable design to help make things more green, to make the earth more sustainable. And so we didn't understand that little thing. We didn't get it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I had another child who he had so much energy. We didn't even like going out. Just stay home.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't want to have to explain this child's energy to somebody.
Okay.
Just stay home.
Yeah.
But this kid, I would, I'm a praying mama, so I would pray, Lord, I don't know what to do with this kid's energy, but I don't want to stifle it and I don't want to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Show me how to direct it. Because I figured if he had the energy, he had it for a purpose. I didn't understand it. Sometimes it got on my nerves because he wouldn't sit down. But if he had it for a reason. So in that, I would just say, that's the letting your kids explore without criticizing what we don't understand. Because as parents, we don't understand everything.
That's right. That's right.
Let him take the truck apart. Maybe he's going to be the next great engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Versus thinking, I just paid $45 for that truck and you took it apart. Let him take it apart and put it back together. He may own his own, manufacturing company one day. We don't know.
That's right. That's a very interesting way of looking at it because certainly, growing up as a child, as I grew up there in Central Virginia, uh, we tore up everything. We were manipulating everything. We were into everything, and we were constantly told, "Child, sit down, sit down, sit down." Oh my God, y'all are getting on my nerves. Oh my God. I can't tell you how many times we made my mother almost go bald and climb a tree or whatever. But to your point, that's right. Let the children explore since you're sitting there watching them anyway. You're not going to let them climb out of the window. You're not going to let them drink bleach or anything. Let them explore. Let them see. Let them learn. And
Right.
it's very refreshing to hear a parent say that. Especially about raising and watching their children. It's very refreshing to hear that.
I did that as a young mom. I
Hmm.
became a mom when I was 20 years old. So it's not that I had all of this great wisdom because I waited to have children until I was 35. It's because I listened to what was on the inside of me.
You don't hear a lot of parents saying that nowadays. I don't think I've ever heard. Well, I can't say I've never heard that, but certainly that is very refreshing to have an environment as a parent to let them learn as soon as they are old enough to crawl.
Yes.
Because that's when the learning. I wouldn't say that's when the learning starts, but man, they really take off with it. Because their brain is accepting so much. Their brain is
Yes.
their brain is being bombarded with all of this, whatever it is, And, it's very interesting just to sit there and watch them learn to see what they're going to take in or what they're not going to take in or whatever. It's an interesting thing. And I've only come to that conclusion as I've gotten older, you know.
Hmm.
I don't have children of my own, but I work with children every day. And it is quite an experience, let me tell you, through the good and the bad and through the ups and the downs. It is something. When I sit there and I actually get these learnable moments, quote unquote, and I'm sitting there looking at them, I'm like, okay, now what are you going to do with this information that I'm trying to climb over walls, trying to teach you or trying to
Hmm.
show you? It's quite the experience. It really is. You mentioned about a Christian family a moment ago. I'd like to know, what role do you envision the church playing in this as far as making the necessary changes needed?
I think the church is an awesome place to learn and to grow, but I do believe that the onus is on the parents. The primary responsibility comes back to the parent. As the parent learns and grows, and the church is there to support that learning and that growing, because you have churches nowadays that have couples ministries and children's ministries and financial workshops. So they're a great support, and they're broadening their reach, because even when I was a kid, there was no financial workshop at church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You gave your offering, you gave your tithe or whatever you did, but you didn't come and go to a financial workshop. So I think the church is realizing that, hey, the people need some more education.
Yes.
They need help within their family walls. And that's where you get the marriage ministries, the financial workshops, and things of that nature. So I do think that the church is a great support, but it still boils down to the parents teaching what they've learned. And if you haven't learned it, it's not too late to get the knowledge, but it comes down to the parents learning so they can impart.
Without the parents driving the vehicle, without the parents driving the car, dare I say, the car's going to crash. And
Oh, yeah.
there is certainly a need, as you mentioned, for the population, for the congregation, I'm sorry, of the church to learn more. Uh, I really believe that the church has an integral part in all of this with regards to the learning of more knowledge, whether it pertains to our children, our families, the ministries, the different ministries, as you mentioned.
Yes, because most people, if you are a churchgoer, the congregants put a lot of faith, a lot of credence in what their pastor is telling them.
Hmm.
They're going to that place of worship because they believe that the man of God there hears from the Lord to give them wisdom,
Yes,
or else they wouldn't be sitting in that house of worship.
that's right.
So it is great to see that the pastors are broadening that spectrum and bringing in other things so that the people learn about finances, they learn about, raising their children, they learn about missions work, they learn about way more than we did in church in years gone by. The church does play a big role, but it still boils down to that parent and what you do in your home.
We are speaking with Deborah L Mills. She is the author of the article "How You're Cursing Your Child: The Truth About Generational Blessings." She's also a speaker and transitional life strategist. She mentored with organizations like Crowley Cares, RARE, RARE, which serves middle school students, as well as the Community Parent Engagement Program. She was the keynote speaker with the National Association for Professional Women and Mocha Moms, and she's given us some of her very valuable time today. Deborah, if you could please speak to the importance of our children learning and loving the Word of God at the earliest age possible. And then the second part of the question, do you think most parents understand this?
You can start speaking to your kids when they're in your womb.
Mm-hmm.
Their little ears are working then. You can start speaking things over them, or before you even become pregnant, start speaking things over them and watch those things manifest in their life. And you'll be amazed what they come to this earth knowing. I believe that children are these little packages that have just come straight from the presence of God.
Okay.
And they've just transitioned into this earth realm, and there's so much in them, and it's up to us to begin to draw it out of them. we don't even have to put a whole lot in because God has placed so much in. We just have to begin to draw it out and nurture it. So I'm a big proponent that they begin to learn very early. I just wrote an article a few weeks ago that gave short memory verses, short scriptures that your kids can start learning. Another story is one of my sons. He had a really big stutter when he was maybe about 3, 4 years old. Oh, he stuttered so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And we wrote out a little confession for him. And he would say that confession every day. And that was part of us instilling the word of God in him, that he would love that word and know that it would work for his life. And he would say every day that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and I do not have to stutter because I am made in the image of Christ.
Wow.
Every day he would say that, every day, until finally one day he stopped stuttering.
Wow.
And some may say, oh, he would have grown out of it anyway. Well, I can't tell you that he would have or he wouldn't, but I know what was in my heart to teach my kid.
My father used to stutter. He stuttered awfully. Um, I can identify with your loved one, especially your child, stuttering and overcoming it. I'm glad to hear that. I certainly think that the Word of God has much to do about everything. To tell you the truth, um,
Yes.
that is refreshing to hear because nothing happens without the blessings of God. So
Mm-hmm.
certainly that is a blessing to hear. I wanted to ask you a question that's a bit off base, and I wanted to get your opinion about it. It's in regards to education. And with regards to education, do you believe that there's a market failure, say where demand outweighs supply when it comes to education for our children? Please explain.
I think that we live in a time where it is challenging. It can be very challenging for our kids to find jobs. They go to college, have these student loans, and now they're looking for a place of employment.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it goes back to a question you asked earlier in helping our kids figure out their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do believe that when they are standing in their purpose, that it doesn't matter if the supply outweighs or the demand outweighs the supply or whichever way it may go. If they're standing in their purpose, if they can almost create their own market niche.
Okay. Yes.
But they have to know what that purpose is. And a lot of our kids and a lot of us as adults, we haven't yet figured out what our purpose is. And when we don't know what our purpose is, we're like, I'll take any job that comes along and paying a decent salary.
Yeah.
And then they get to the point where, well, shoot, I'm just going to apply. I'll take any job.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're secure in what your purpose is, if the job is not available, you will create your own position.
The way that these jobs are out here nowadays, I think that's the most sound advice one could give these children or students that are, graduating college, have gone to learn different skill sets. Why not, take what you've learned and apply it for yourself? You know,
Yes,
like you said, your own market niche. If it's what you're passionate
yes.
about, if it's what you're good at, go for it. Certainly, go for
Go
it.
for it.
Yeah,
Go for it. And that thing may not make enough money to supply all of your needs to begin. So who cares if you have to work at McDonald's while you're building up your market?
sure.
Because there's the ends to the means
Yes.
or means to the end, whichever way that goes. I'm getting these sayings mixed up. But,
Uh-huh.
my point is that don't be discouraged because you have this small beginning, because there's something greater on the other side. When you know your purpose, nobody can get you off of that.
We can always speak about positive things, such as passing down generational blessings. However, there are too many instances where this does not happen at all in families. Please speak about this and instruct us about how we can change this.
We talked about Generation One, Black and Married with Kids, or BMWK. They actually have a film out on that right now about finances. But we can all be Generation One if something wasn't passed along to us. It can start with you, that I'm going to create something that I can pass along to my offspring, and then they can pass along to theirs. You have to decide, what do you want to pass along? You make the choice. And even if you look back to that generation behind you, You may have to search to find something good. I mean, I came, just being brutally honest, my father was not the best dad. And I sat myself down one day and said, I'm going to find something good there. And I dug for it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't on the surface, and we can all do that. What is something good? Even if it's just the thing that he cared enough to stick around. Okay, well, shoot, that was good. I could pass that along. I'm going to care enough to stick around.
Mm-hmm.
Look for something. It may not be on the surface, but you can dig deep and find something positive. I mean, fight for something positive and pass that thing along, and then create new things to pass on to your children and the generations to come.
We have been speaking with Deborah L Mills. She is the author of the article, How You're Cursing Your Child, The Truth About Generational Blessings. She's a speaker and transitional life strategist. She's also mentored with organizations like Crowley Cares, RARE, that's RARE, which serves middle school students, as well as the Community Parent Engagement Program. She was also the keynote speaker with the National Association for Professional Women and Mocha Moms, and she's given us some of her very valuable time today. And Deborah, please feel free to plug your website and any project or projects that you are now involved in.
My website is www.deborah, my first name, and then Jerome, JERONE.com. You can find me there. All of my information is there. And I actually have a new project and a new website that I'm working on. And I'll go ahead and give you that website. It's Glama, GLAMA.me. You pronounce it Glamami. And that comes from the Bible saying that the older women should instruct the younger ones, that you should pass this stuff on. And
Yes.
That's me thinking generationally that I want to pass something on.
Yes.
So Glam on Me is for grandmothers and moms to connect and to celebrate, them as being mothers and grandmothers and the wisdom that goes along with those years of experience.
Okay.
So Glam Mommy will be doing some big things really soon. I'm excited about bridging that gap. Some ladies don't have a grandma in their life, but you want that grandmother's wisdom.
Yes. Yes.
I don't think I look like a grandma. Let me say that.
Well,
I don't know. You might look at me and go, yeah, you do.
No, I've seen your biopic. No, you do not look like a grandma. I tell you the truth. I don't know what a grandma. I don't know what a grandma is supposed to look like. But no, you do not look like a grandma at all, sister. No, you do. You do not.
That's right. See, we are the 21st century grandmother. We don't have to have canes and gray hair, but we still have the wisdom.
That's right.
We still have the wisdom, and that's what I want that website to do, is to pass along that wisdom and share information.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, with regards to your new website that's coming up, as well as any other thing or project that you are involved in, please feel free to let us know here at today's talk. And as we want you to become a very good friend of the show, as is Lamar Tyler. It's been a while since I've talked to him, but he's been a friend of the show for quite a while now. So, anytime that you are doing anything new or have a new article, as I will be looking you up as well, we certainly hope that you will come back to today's talk and impart some of the very wise and good knowledge that you can give us.
I appreciate that so much.
Yes, absolutely.